Osiris.
Hello and welcome to Spotlight On, presented by Osiris Media. I'm your host, Lawrence Purrier. Today, the spotlight shines on musicians Bart Wirtz and Emiel van Rijthoven, who together perform and record under the name WAAN, which is Dutch for Craze. WAAN have a new record, Echo Echo, out on February 24th through the Sonar Kollektiv label. As of this recording, 3 tracks have already appeared in streaming outlets and through the band's bandcamp page. In fact, just hours before we spoke, the final advance track, Omi, dropped. If you're a fan of Floating Points, Bad Bad Not Good, Ezra Collective, or any of the other modern artists making jazz more electronic, or making electronic music more improvisational, WAAN is for you. I hope you enjoy our talk and you check out their music. Where are each of you?
I'm in Utrecht. It's a city in the middle of Holland. The Netherlands, I should say.
I've been there.
Oh yeah, in Utrecht, in my city?
Yeah, on a Benelux pass.
Oh, nice. Oh yeah, you guys do the whole Benelux in a few days.
Yeah, I took about a week. Started in Amsterdam, went through Luxembourg, Bruges, everything. It was wonderful. Wonderful, yeah.
Wow, yeah. Those cities are great. Yeah.
I'm in Leiden. That's like a beautiful city just between Rotterdam and Amsterdam.
Does the train go through Leiden as well? Because that sounds familiar.
Right. It does. It used to be a big city. It used to be the birth city of Rembrandt, and that's got a quite famous university. But now, compared to the other cities, in Utrecht and Rotterdam, Amsterdam, it's quite small. Yeah, I'm fine here. We got our studio where we recorded everything, so it's a nice place.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we're about 40 minutes apart from each other. So I'm driving most of the time to his studio, and then we work together.
Are you in a studio as well? I see some equipment behind you.
It's my home studio with my piano, my organ, and my vintage synthesizer, and too much gear.
It's beautiful. Looks fun. I'd never leave.
No, I'm here a lot.
Yeah. So, as fate would have it, a new song came out earlier today, I noticed. It showed up in my Spotify, which was wonderful. So I've spent the last few hours immersed in your world.
Hours? Wow. No, that's a big compliment. Thanks.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it so much. Every once in a while, I come across some music that feels as though it was designed specifically with me in mind. And your music does that. It's very irresistible music that's at that intersection of what's been going on in jazz as well as what's been going on with electronic music. And as a longtime jazz fan, it's such an exciting time. Like, I feel like jazz is having a moment it certainly hasn't had in my adult lifetime in terms of how it's touching mainstream music, and whether that's through hip hop or electronic music. And I wonder, do you perceive that at all as creators?
Yeah, this is such a big compliment, and it really gets to me, because we've been working on this record for almost 6 years, and these 6 years were not only working in the studio, but it had also to do with all these things, the exploration of all these different styles and looking for our musical identity, actually. And we've been playing for quite some time. We've been talking a lot about, what do we want, and what is the closest we can get to our personalities. And once you take that journey, you come across all the different styles and genres. And like you just saw on video, Emiel has a huge amount of vintage synthesizers. So I have a big studio with lots of analog gear. So what you described in 2 sentences is like the bottom line, what I'm trying to explain in a much longer story. But I mean, you're right. It's very interesting to bring together all these worlds of electronics and also improvisation. And our producer, Oscar de Jong, he was like constantly saying, guys, don't forget to play, because playing and where we come from, like improvisation, connecting with each other, that's the most important thing of jazz. And that's where we were born.
Yeah, that's great to have, because the producer, the not jazz guy, reminded us to not forget.
I was curious about the role of a producer. You sort of jumped to that rather quickly. And it's interesting to me because I have some process questions actually about how you work. So if you don't mind, I don't mean to deconstruct what you do, but I'm very intrigued. In the type of work you have wound up creating, what is the role of the producer?
Yeah, he came in later. So with the two of us, made the first progression on the different songs. And later on, Oscar came in and started interfere with our music, and really in a super honest way. So he's really saying really bland, like, this is great, this sucks, I don't like it. And in such a way that we could argue with, and sometimes he turned around like, oh yeah, okay, I do like it. And so he was really rigid. And that helped us a lot. That's what we wanted. Everybody wants a producer who is really going into the stuff and not of hurting someone's feelings.
Yeah, and at the same time, we share the same studio. So, and he's coming from this electronic dance stuff. So, but he has a big knowledge of old jazz records. So he said, yeah, this reminds me of this record with Eric Dolphy and Oliver Nelson. Let's go into that. So this was really nice. Somebody, helping us out with a broader view than just, can we play an F over C major sharp 11 chord, you know?
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Sometimes giving direction a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of where I wanted to tease out a little bit was when you say, he likes something, he doesn't like something. There's lots of different types of roles a producer can play in the crafting of a sound or the crafting of an album. And it sounds like as part of the journey you went on, did you reach a point where you needed somebody to come in to help you get there? If you mentioned the 6-year-long sort of exploration of who you were together. Did you reach a point where you needed that?
That's a good one.
My first reaction would be, I don't think so. It just happened. That's why we also said produced by WAAN and Oscar, because we were already taking those steps, and it was like not more than logical that Oscar just joined us, and he did so much more work, so much more time than we could ever pay him. So this is like kind of on base of a friendship, musical brotherhood, something like this.
We could have done it with the two of us. We could have, but I really don't know how it would have sounded or what it would have been. But he blended in just fine. It was super nice.
To just ask a little bit more along the process lines, am I correct in when I read that essentially you recorded as an ensemble, improvised, you recorded the works, and then the two of you sort of came in and did more production over it, sounds, electronics? Could you take me through that a little bit?
You want to describe it, Bart? Because it was also for you a personal journey.
Yeah, well, we started out playing in my group like 6 years ago. Was my record under my own name, and then I thought, okay, I want to start a group because I want to explore more this field of electronic music and acoustic music and combining it. And a good way seemed to me to form a band, to adapt a name that is not mine. This was a transition that took some time. And then Emiel and I finally decided, okay, throw everything away. We started at point zero. And then we had some ideas already. So we made these demos, and with these demos in mind, that changed like some tunes that changed 5-6 times.
Yeah, but I want to interrupt you. But that was because we started out as a sort of idea what to do as a collective, as a band.
Right. Yeah.
And then we recorded some stuff already. In the process, we decided, okay, this is not going to work because everybody had different agendas and were not really
on the same page.
Yeah, exactly. Not really on the same page. So we kept those recordings, and with some of those songs, we progressed along with the two of us. Like we changed to a duo to be more powerful and more productive and more, it's easier to decide stuff.
Yeah, then we changed from changing things with the two of us, and then we thought, okay, we need another couple of sessions, and we invited some other musicians in the studio, and we did some other sessions, and a couple of tunes came out real like joyful and playful because of that. We just were free to play and finally knew what direction we wanted to go.
The first ones were more of a battle, but you don't hear it in the end.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you disclose in the record which ones came when, or is that up to the listener to figure out?
Yeah, I suppose it's up to the listener, I guess.
The funny thing is that changes all the time during a process, because we wrote one tune, we wrote it like in a day, in opposite to other tracks that took us 4 years. Those tunes, they came out pretty nice. And then during the mixing process, there was also like some struggling, and then it turned out to be just fine. You know, it changes constantly in the process. So one moment you think this is the killer track of the album, we're gonna #1 hit single, and then another moment it's another track. So that changes.
Yeah.
Just so I get it right, how do you pronounce the band name?
It's called WAAN.
WAAN.
It's
WAAN.
we wanted a name that was a little bit of Europe sounding in the name. So a lot of bands in the Netherlands are taking on English names, and that's nice. But I'm proud of the Dutch jazz and the European jazz as a next to the American jazz.
Yeah,
it's a different flavor, different sound, and I'm very proud of it. So that's why I wanted such a name.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Would you mind exploring that a little bit and telling me about, if you can, if it's possible, how would you identify the differences in sound, or what would you attribute it to? Is there a thing?
Yeah, I think we talked about it, Bart, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. I think it all started with, well, let me talk, because it's hard to talk for you, Emiel. But for me personally, I started playing saxophone because of the records of Cannibal Adderley, John Coltrane, Arthur Blythe. My father had a big record collection. He was a valve trombone player, so it automatically got to me, and started playing jazz when I went to the conservatory. That's the college for music here. I wanted to study jazz and nothing but it. And then when I came there, I was before actually in high school, I was playing with some funk groups, and also a group with a native language, the Dutch language, you know what I mean. So this was all these influences came to me when I was at conservatory, and then my interest started in, okay, what's my identity and what's my thing. And then one of my first records, I went to the States to play with my heroes, Nicholas Payton on trumpet, Kendrick Scott on drums, Richie Goods bass, and Xavier Davis, and this was like a dream come true. And then when we were done, I learned so much, and also took so much of the energy of these American musicians that really made me a better player and understood more about music. And then I started thinking, okay, what's my role in this? And with friends from Leiden being the most famous electronic DJs of the world, I thought, this is also part of my world. So that took my interest in combining those things. That still doesn't explain the difference in European jazz styles and American, but I'm just wanting to explain that where you grow up obviously forms you as a musician.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
We'll be back with more Spotlight On, presented by Osiris Media, after this break. And now, back to Spotlight On. Are you finding now, or let me actually ask this differently. If we do accept this idea that jazz music has started to reach into these other areas like hip hop and electronic, do you see that with the faces in the crowd? Are you playing in rock clubs? Are you playing in those types of environments? Or are you still playing primarily jazz venues, jazz audience? Or do you not even think about audience that way? That's something I'm really curious about.
We do. One of the goals this time was like, we set a goal, and it was like playing Lowlands, which is one of the biggest indie dance, everything festivals here in the Netherlands. And we said, like, we want to play Lowlands and North Sea Jazz Festival, because we usually, when we have a new album, that's really nice about this North Sea Jazz Festival, they invite a lot of Dutch musicians, so they give them a chance to play on nice stages and for a big crowd. So, but this is one of the goals we set, like, this is a dream we want to do. And that was not because if we don't get a chance to play line dance, whatever. But it's a good goal for us to go, a good direction in musical wise, and also for the audience. There's a little bit younger audience that is still very interested in live music, but you cannot reach by playing in mainly jazz venues.
That's one thing. A little bit stuck in the middle, because there's the jazz venues with the jazz. We are a bit too electronic. Some venues tend to say that we are a bit too electronic for their club, and sometimes the pop or rock venues are a bit hesitant because it's too jazzy. Yeah, and we're new, so we're trying a new direction. Before we only played in the jazz clubs and the jazz festivals, and we now want to make the jump. But I hope.
Yeah, and also the label Sonar is more rooted in electronic music, which can really help because we get to meet new people like you, for instance, but also like different ways. It's very, very exciting.
Are there other artists whose path and progression along those same lines you admire? Like I saw in some of the material you mentioned Bad Bad Not Good. I think Ezra Collective, maybe even Donnie McCaslin. You know, are these people who you're watching kind of forge a path for a group like yours who can transcend the genre?
Yeah, of course. And also more and more venues and festivals are sitting in the middle. More and more are coming.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a development. And young audience is coming, and that's great.
Yeah, we have this like inspiration list, and we send each other in the group. We send each other inspirational music lists.
Yeah,
and we went to Hiatus Coyote, for instance, with the three of us. Then the other day we listened to Floating Point, the English DJ who does a lot of crossover and crazy stuff. And then we go from Bad Bad Not Good to Belgian bands, for instance, which have a very vivid jazz scene with the stuff and more of those groups. Yeah, it's happening everywhere, and it's really interesting. Yeah.
It's really exciting. Yeah, I'm not familiar with stuff, but in the last like 2 weeks, their name has come up multiple times. So I feel like I need to dig in. Yeah,
I heard they're gonna do their last tour, but I'm not sure if I'm now being Dutch tabloid style doing Dutch style, but that's what I heard.
Oh wow! Well, that's just like me to get in at the end. So
yeah. Last chance.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about how you are thinking about presenting this music live? You know, I watched the videos that you've posted from the studio, and the close filming and having the camera eye in the middle of the action made it very exciting. And I wonder how you're thinking about bringing this in a live context. Can you do it? Can you realize your vision live the same way you can in the studio?
Yeah, actually, yes. And it's also, again, a process. The band is new. So the guys who are playing live with us are Mark Schilders and Matteo Matsu. And that's the drummer and the bass player. And we're just getting to know each other, like playing wise, but they're so good. So the level we get in is like already it sounds great for us. I'm very happy with it, with the way it sounds already. And also, what's the thing? We are doing a lot of electronic stuff combined with playing jazz. So we didn't want to be a slave of the computer. So there's no backing track. So we are not playing along. So we are all playing the sounds, the different sounds to match the sound of the produced album. So we are really trying to let people hear live the same kind of sound image, the same sound that they hear on the album. But we also now realizing we have to play more, not forget to play and have fun. And we're still a bit trying to get on top of it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and let's not forget that Emiel is really like a technical wonder, and he is like the mother of band because he owns his whole mothership with Ableton, and we are all connected to him. So we play, we all have MIDI connected to Emiel's computer, There are samples, is some analog shit going, and it's all connected to
synthesizers,
motherboard.
Hammond organ samples.
Yeah, so we're now looking for a way to, and tomorrow we have our first tryout. So we are now ready for it. And we've been trying to combine those electronics and still have the playfulness of improvising and playing with each other.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, it really is.
Emiel, do you mind me asking, are you performing on your keyboard and processing their sounds at the same time? Or like what is the interconnectedness that Bart refers to? What is that about?
There is, for instance, the drummer has a little pad that he triggers samples like an electronic clap or other things. So that's a sort of electronic drumming he does. I switched for everybody. I switched the sounds per song. So he has another set of samples. It's all central with me. And also when Bart is not playing the saxophone, he can, but I'm playing a solo, for instance, or there's a part where he is not playing, then he can play on the keyboard and also extra stuff that's in the song. And also, at one point in one song, I processed also his sax sound, like put a massive reverb on one spot.
Funny fact was that we did in the studio, we did one track and I play with a harmonizer. So this sounds a little bit like extra synthesizer, but I couldn't do it at the same time. It was too complicated. So now we sampled that harmonizer note for note, and Emiel wanted to play it with me as a counter melody. But then Emiel had to play at a certain period, so we were stuck again. So then we gave it to Matteo. So he's playing the bass, he's playing the other counter melody. So we have a melody divided over three guys in the band. It's fun.
That's a lot of fun. Also a process. If it's too, it must not be too gimmicky. We have to watch out for that.
But there's a real commitment to a combination of sort of spontaneity and improvisation, plus this element of triggers and defined sort of inputs. But it also a very interesting commitment to blending the electronic with the organic that I find very intriguing. It's very interesting.
Yeah, because also electronic, you don't have the power to change dynamics so easily as you do with a horn. You can, or with a voice, you can be dynamic, you can be busy, you can be quiet. There are so many possibilities that a sample doesn't have, for instance. So you have to create those samples that can be available for the flow that you're looking for.
Yeah, and not overplay or over process, I would imagine, is a challenge.
You can lose yourself in that.
Emiel, are you a gearhead? Are you a collector? Do you accumulate lots of electronics, or like how? Yeah. What's your experience there? Is it a discipline you have to have?
Addiction. Yeah, I did so. Now not so much anymore. Or maybe no, not so much. No, or like one thing a year or so. Maybe I did have a phase in my life when I collected a whole lot of stuff. Yeah, and I really like it. I studied electronics before I did music, so that's my second love is electronics. I also repair all the and restore all the things I buy.
Oh wow!
It's like Zen with the soldering iron and figuring out the problem.
Oscar's still waiting for his Farfisa for 2 months now.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a little bit busy. Sorry. Yeah. So I really love it. And also I'm really handy with computers and stuff. I've always been. So I feel really comfortable with complex stuff on stage. I don't have any fear at all. So that's one thing you have to have. Else you wouldn't, you shouldn't do this. It's too much stress. I don't feel it that much.
How much gear will you bring to the gig tomorrow? Like, seeing those studio videos, and just what you showed me over camera, you have a lot of equipment. What's your live rig?
Shall I go first, Bart?
Yes. I'll have a coffee.
Yeah. No. To be honest, as little as possible. It's a Fender Rhodes, a real one, and it's midified also. So I can play different sounds on the Fender and then mute the original sound and then play, for instance, a clavinet or a Wurlitzer sound on the Fender Rhodes. And then a synthesizer, virtual analog, Roland System 8 thing. It's really, I can do anything I want with it. It's my bread and butter thing. And the other keyboard is, the third one and last one is a Nord stage, but I only use it as MIDI controller. So it could be any keyboard whatsoever. And that's the one I have with me all the time. So I used it, but I don't use any sounds of it. All the sounds come from that one, come from the computer. The rest, the Rhodes and the synthesizer are produce their own sound. Yeah, that's it. And then a laptop and a USB hub, and,
right,
and a sound, and a sound card. That's it.
Yeah, on the Fender, do you go to that because you can get a feel you want? Like you don't play the Nord necessarily. It's basically it's the box you're drawing from.
Exactly. So the Rhodes, really, people are good in making the stuff in virtual plugins, the older instruments, the pianos, the Rhodes, it sounds nice, but if you play it, the real thing is uncomparable to a plugin. So yeah, that's why really it translates so good over PA speakers as well. It really carries. And then if you do it from a computer, it doesn't have so much impact.
Yeah, I love keyboard rigs. So I'm always curious as to how much is coming from the box versus the actual instrument. Yeah.
I play solos a lot on the road, so I want it to be real.
Did you midify the Rhodes yourself?
Yeah.
You wired, you did. I figured.
Yeah.
As a horn player, Bart, are you like, what's your obsession? Are you like, is it about the mouthpiece, the reed? Do you sleep with your instrument? Are you?
No.
Yes, and yes.
No, sometimes I complain on my reeds, but no, I play the same reeds for years. I played the same mouthpiece for years. I'm not changing anymore. I found my horn, got a good repairman. That's it. I also play like effects on the sax, and now I'm building a case for the analog side. So I'm still a big fan of the music of Eddie Harris. So I was always looking for what kind of effects he was using in the 60s. I even bought a Veritone amp, which is a huge thing. I won't be bringing that to the gig, but I'll bring my Maestro for woodwinds effect, which is a really crappy but great.
Sort of the same thing without the speaker, isn't it?
It's different, actually. The Veritone was created by Selmer, a saxophone brand. Uh-oh. And the Maestro was created by Gibson back in the 60s.
Cool.
Eddie Harris, for instance, used them both. And it's limited. You cannot do so much with it. But the sound that it creates is still really, really rich. And I like it, especially in combination with the Roland Space Echo, what we use. So I got some pedals for that. And I use a piezo element in my sax that's connected to these effects and also the harmonizer. And then I can switch to the clean sound on my DPA microphone. So this is what I'm mainly worried about at the moment, and not so much the reeds or the mouthpiece. And when I sleep, my horn is in the corner of the room. So we kind of can separate our private life and playing life.
I sort of, just to get a little bit more of the history lesson from you, it didn't occur to me that jazz musicians were using effects that way. Was Eddie Harris using that rig live, or was that just for the studio?
Yeah, also live. Go to YouTube and see the live recordings. Of course, famous ones with Les McCann live in Switzerland. But also you'll see, I was like freezing these images to see what he was using. Yeah, so sometimes he brought them live, and especially in the studio, only could have dreamed to be there one day and see what he was doing, because it's so rich in different kind of sounds. He must have been exploring the whole studio and all what he could do with it. But also other musicians, like there is this nice live record of Cannibal Adderley playing with Lou Rawls, for instance, live in New Orleans. I thought, and he's also playing the Veritone amp, and also Sonny Stitt did a record with it. Clark Terry played with the Veritone amp. So there was a period in the late 60s, 70s, I guess, where there were already explorations on that field. And I've always played with effects, because we used to have a group here in Holland, and we were already like using these stomp pedals, little boss pedals, guitar pedals, everything, to see what it did on the horn. It's a line where it can be very cheap, in my opinion. So put a pedal on it with a wah-wah on the saxophone sounds a little bit easy. It's not the sound that I prefer live.
Are you able to articulate with the electronics? Are you able to articulate what is it you're going for? What is it that what is it adding for you that's interesting?
Sound,
texture, sound.
Yeah. It can make your sound richer, and also in our studio we're also producing. So I've always been interested in the sound of a group and the sound of everything. Sound is so important to me, and I think when you go, for instance, to a music school, conservatory, the main focus is usually to get your technique together, to get your embouchure together, which obviously also has something to do with sound. But I mean, there are so many fields that are underestimated. Could you say something like this? I mean, if you listen to singers, they're mainly concerned about sound. This is how you reach people. It's not always about technique. If you listen to Tom Waits, for instance. So that fascinates me. And also the what can I do with the sound of the horn? What can I do with the sound of the mouthpiece alone, with the neck, but also, and these effects are like a extension of that.
I'm curious about, what is the scene like where you both are? You know, are you sort of lone operators out in the wilderness, or are you part of a larger community? Is it vibrant? How would you categorize what it's like in your creative environment and your creative world? Is it a good time?
Yeah, I guess so. I was very much active in the pop music and the rock music, even the country scene for the last decade. I'm sort of reintroducing myself back into the scene a bit. And I think, Bart, you really stayed in the jazz. So more people in the jazz than me.
Well, everybody knows each other here, I guess. Like, there are many musicians, but the scene is not that big. And there are a lot of musicians actually in the Netherlands, a lot of venues. But like everywhere, I guess, the traditional jazz venues are kind of disappearing a little bit. Instead, there are popping up some really nice festivals, crossover festivals with indie, rock, pop, hip hop, jazz, world music, whatever. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, and concerning the music scene, there is a really good music scene. It's very interesting, all these things that are happening, I guess.
Yeah, and we contacted Mark, the drummer, and he's a mutual friend of us, and we played with him separately also. And then he was enthusiastic about joining the band. And then we would search for a bass player. And that's the thing. You know everybody, and you want something. We were looking for something new. And then he came in because he was teaching at the musical school of Amsterdam. So he knew a guy. He like, oh, yeah, that's a student of mine. He just graduated. So we have a very young bass player now.
And maybe typical for the scene is that Mark is one of the best jazz drummers we have, but he used to play bass in the band of Weefall. And Weefall is a really popular dance act, which I think they tour through the States as well. So they're becoming quite big, and he was playing bass and sometimes drums. So his openness to all sorts of music is really what draws to him.
So the record comes out at the end of February. Is that am I correct? February 24th? Sound right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Correct.
And is today's single drop the last song we'll get in advance? Is it now we have to wait another month or so?
Yeah, I guess so. We drop another video. Hopefully, if it turns out that we can use it when the album releases, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah. And I think what they do is, but that is something the label said. When we drop the album, automatically a new single will be launched as well. So together, I guess. Yes, man, we're getting old. We don't know about all these strategies and tactics.
I understand. Well, I'm going to look forward to that, and we will make sure that in the episode notes, people know where to find the music and learn more about the two of you. Thank you. Thank you so much for making time to do this. I really appreciate it.
No worries. It was great. Thank you.
It's so nice to talk to you being so enthusiastic and open. So thank you.
Well, good luck. Break a leg tomorrow night. I hope that all the electronics deliver what they're supposed to so that the band can deliver what it needs to.
Well, that's the advantage of a jazz group. We can always relate on our acoustics, you know.
That's a good point. Yeah,
worry.
if the electronics break down, you could still
No
play.
problem.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Bart Wirtz, Emiel van Rijthoven, and WAAN. As always, thank you for listening to Spotlight On, which is presented by Osiris Media. Executive producers are Lawrence Purrier, RJB, Brian Brinkman, and Matt Dwyer. Producers are Lawrence Purrier and Michael Donaldson. Our theme music is by Q-Burn's Abstract Message. If you like what you've heard, please share us with a friend and leave a review on your podcast platform of choice. Don't forget to visit us online at spotlightonpodcast.com or at SpotlightOnPod on Instagram and Twitter. Thanks for listening, be safe, and stay in touch.
Osiris.